If you've been seeing all the recent propaganda that the future of podcasting is all in the video, and you've been sort of panicking about whether you need a 4-camera setup, a ring light, and a face for, well, YouTube, I've got some news that might let you sleep a little bit easier tonight. The most valuable listener you have doesn't care what you look like. They care what you sound like. They care what you have to say. And they're significantly more likely to buy what you recommend, tell their mates about your show, and still be listening 2 years from now.
Podcasting Insights!
Welcome to Podcasting Insights. I'm Neil Velio, and we're going to talk about audio primes. All right, first up, some context. Tom Webster and the team at Sounds Profitable have just recently published a piece of research that should frankly be required reading for anyone making, commissioning, or advertising on any podcast. It's about a segment they've named the audio primes.
One of the questions that we ask in the podcast landscape is, thinking about all the podcasts that you consume, what percentage of them do you watch versus what percent you listen to? And 22% of podcast consumers say that they listen to 3/4 or more of their podcast.
That's roughly 1 in 5. And on almost every metric that actually matters to a business, they outperform the average. Demographically, and this is going to be the bit that's going to really piss a lot of people on LinkedIn off, they're younger, they're not older. They over-index in the 18 to 34 bracket. They over-index in the 35 to 54 bracket. They under-index at 55 plus. They've got more education, they're earning more cash. 9% of them have a household income of over 200 grand versus 6% of the average podcast consumer. And this one is kind of interesting. They're more likely to have kids at home, which, if you think about that for more than a few seconds, makes perfect sense. Parents need their hands and eyes free, and audio is the only medium that delivers that. Now, here's where the research gets quite interesting because it's counterintuitive. You'd assume that audio primes listen because they don't like video, but that's wrong. They consume more video than average. They're significantly higher on YouTube, they're higher on Instagram Reels, and they're higher on TikTok. So they're not rejecting video, they're making an active, deliberate choice. When they consume a podcast, that specific deliberate act of consuming the content, they want it in their ears. And that distinction matters enormously because it means audio isn't the default for them. It's the preference. And preference is a much more powerful thing than a default. Let's talk loyalty because this is kind of where it gets fun. 77% of audio primes listen to podcasts daily or weekly, 18 points higher than the average. 72% use the same platform every time. Once they're on your platform, they're not hopping away. They follow fewer shows. In fact, 48% follow just 1 or 2. But when it comes to those 1 or 2 shows, they're ride or die. It's all habit. It's part of their weekly rhythm. And my favorite stat from the whole report, which you can find linked from the episode description, 22% of audio primes say they have never stopped listening to a podcast, ever, in their lives. Once they find the one they like, they just keep going with it. It's appointment to download, which should make every podcaster listening to my voice right now stop and breathe for just a second. You are building something that has the potential to become sticky, if you do it right. And of course, everyone wants to know about ads, because if you are monetizing, this is the bit you're going to need to know. Audio primes don't really care about ad volume. They under-index on too many ads as a reason to quit out of a podcast. What they do care about is relevance. They over-index on the ads weren't relevant as a reason to quit a show. So, translated into simple terms, audio primes will happily listen to ads. They just want them to make sense to them and for the show, for the topic. Dumping a generic programmatic spot into a niche show is going to hurt this audience. whereas a thoughtful, contextual host-read endorsement will probably land with them. So there's a lesson in there for anyone building a monetization strategy based on dynamic ad insertion alone. It's probably not going to work, particularly if you're farming that out to the likes of Libsyn ads or Acast ads. Now, the Sounds Profitable team brought in a real neuroscientist on all this, Alberto, who broke down what's actually happening in the brain when you're listening to a voice that you've heard before. And it comes down to three key things. All right, number one, oxytocin, also known as the bonding hormone. It's what mothers produce when they're breastfeeding, and it's what you produce when you hear the voice of a podcast host that you listen to regularly. Number two, mirror neurons. These are firing up when you empathize with another human. When your favorite host sounds sad, your brain goes a bit sad. When they laugh, you smile. You are literally, neurologically mirroring them. And point three, mere exposure. Now, this is the compounding effect that we talk about when it comes to showing up regularly, consistency, week after week, month after month. That familiarity accrues into trust, and trust in this space is the single scarcest resource on Earth. So if you put all three of those together, you get what psychologists call a parasocial relationship, a one-way bond where the listener genuinely feels like the host is their friend. And did you know, audio creates a stronger parasocial bond than video does? Because video gives your brain too many things to focus on. You're looking at things. Whereas audio strips it to voice and words. You're not watching someone, you're sitting with them. Or as Alberto in this webinar put it, a screen makes you a spectator, a voice makes you a friend, which frankly, I might get printed on a t-shirt. We've got to address the elephant in the room here, AI, because this came up in the research and it's relevant to the point as well. Audio primes really don't want AI-generated voices. In fact, about half say they'd be less likely to keep listening if they found out their favorite show was AI voiced. Only 15% said they'd be more likely to keep listening. Video primes, which is those people who mostly watch, are far more open to synthetic voices, probably because they're being subjected to them all the time with AI-generated slop on TikTok and Reels. They've become desensitized to it. For those of us in the audio-first world, that is a useful line drawn in the sand. Your audience came to you for a human, so don't feed them a machine. Okay, so what to actually do with this information then? Let me turn all of this into something you can actually action. If audio primes are your most valuable audience and the data is pretty unambiguous that they are, here's what the research is telling you to do. Number one, be consistent. Whatever your cadence, weekly, fortnightly, monthly, be there. The mere exposure effect only works if you actually expose. So don't do what I did with this show and go silent for a month. In fact, it was more than a month. Show up. Do the recordings. Publish. Number two, be human. Your voice is literally your superpower, so don't outsource that to any AI software. Yeah, it's really impressive what 11 Labs can do. Use it as a backup. Don't lean on it. Point three, be relevant with your ads. Don't just take a paycheck. Ask whether that ad fits with your audience and read it with some thought behind it. Make sure there's alignment there. Point four, don't obsess about video. Sure, have a YouTube presence. That's fine. They are still saying it's the number one discovery channel. Well, whether we like that or not, there might be some truth to it. It has a great search engine. But don't sacrifice the thing that makes audio work in pursuit of video metrics that don't really translate to loyalty anyway. Number five, nurture the word of mouth. Audio primes tend to recommend shows to their friends. A 30-second, if you enjoyed this, tell someone who'd like it. That's worth way more than most paid marketing. And point six, think about your listeners being parents. Hands-free, eyes-free isn't a nice to have for them. It's a necessity. And it's a genuinely underserved market. Think about how your content can reach people where they are and how they consume. Thanks for listening. Send me your thoughts. You'll find me on LinkedIn, or if you want to, go to podmastery.co and get in touch that way. Until the next episode, good luck with your continuing journey towards Podmastery.